Monday morning, March 15th, which means we need more coffee today. That's delicious. But it's March 15th, so big shout out, happy birthday to my friend Trish Davis. It's also the 23rd day of the season of Lent. And today, this is a tough one. Today's a tough one. It comes to us from Isaiah chapter 48, verse 10. See, that was my second sip. All right. Isaiah chapter 48, verse 10 says, "Behold, I have refined you, but not as silver. I have tested you in the furnace of affliction." I have tested you in the furnace of affliction. That scripture is referring to Israel having to go into Babylon. Also, it's interesting to note that the unleavened bread that Israel will eat during Passover week, the week of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the unleavened bread is referred to as the bread of affliction. The bread of affliction. Now, if you were to look up the word affliction, it means something that causes pain and suffering. And a lot of people, when we think about pain and suffering, we ask the question, why would a loving God allow someone to go through pain, someone to go through suffering? But that's really not even the question of Isaiah. Isaiah 48, it really implies, like, behold, I have refined you, but not as silver. I have tested you in the furnace of affliction. Not only does God allow it, it's God who puts us through it. And that is extremely interesting. When we look at affliction, think about something that has caused you pain. Think about something that has caused you a deep sorrow and deep hurt. And whether that is a loss of a loved one, or whether it is a loss of a job, or whatever it was, that there maybe is a physical pain, but then there's also a emotional pain that you're going through. And sometimes you get so discouraged about it. Sometimes you get so even depressed about it, and people try and encourage you, saying it's going to get better, or time will heal that wound and make it better, or I understand what you're going through, whether or not they do understand the pain that you're going through. One of the things that caught my attention is C.S. Lewis. He has a way with words a long time ago, but in a book called The Problem of Pain, C.S. Lewis writes these words: "Pain insists on being attended to. God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks to us in our conscience, but shouts to us in our pains. It is his megaphone to rouse a deaf world." And so it's as if though C.S. Lewis is telling us that when we are suffering affliction, when we are going through suffering and pain, it's God is trying to communicate to us. God is trying to get something across to us, because we have tuned him out ever since. We have tuned him out before. And this is his way of saying, wake up. This is his way of getting our attention. Now, the good news about pain and suffering and affliction is he uses the terminology furnace. And most of us remember the story in the book of Daniel of the King Nebuchadnezzar throwing the 3 Hebrew children into the fiery furnace. The fiery furnace. He bound them together, and he heated the furnace 7 times hotter than it was supposed to be, and then he threw them bound into the furnace. And when Nebuchadnezzar looked in, he was surprised. And he asked those that were around, says, "Did I not throw 3 bound into the furnace? And they said, well, surely, King. And he says, then why do I see 4? And walking, they're not bound anymore. They're walking all around. And the 4th one kind of looks like the Son of God. So the idea is that not only does God allow the suffering and the affliction, that he puts us through the suffering and affliction, the good news is that he walks with us through the suffering and affliction. He's refining, he's molding, he's trying to create something special in your life. I want to turn to Psalm chapter 25. It's a Psalm of David. Verse 16 through 18, the psalmist says, turn to me and be gracious to me, for I am lonely and afflicted. The troubles of my heart are enlarged. Bring me out of my distress. Look upon my affliction and my trouble, and forgive all my sins. And so the psalmist, Psalm David, he realized that the affliction that he was going through, the pain and the suffering that he was going through, God was refining him. He was transforming him on the inside, removing the sin in his life. It was God's megaphone to get his attention and to speak to him. And if we'll really think about what really has caused us great pain, we'll realize that that pain might have been the one thing that actually brought us closer to God. Thank you guys so much for watching today. I pray y'all have a blessed and amazing Monday. And again, happy birthday, Trish.